Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Daybay Public Library. In line with the Nallas Act, we are more than privileged and honored to feature the fourth installment of Mr. Motilal Boodoosing's book launch, or Aajee or Nani Kahanis. Nallas is more than pleased to provide both upcoming and already established authors a platform to be able to express themselves and their work in a conducive and entertaining environment. Today, we again are so privileged that we can host this illustrious program, and we thank you each and every one for coming out. At this time, I would like to introduce a man of many talents and a long-time comrade of the Daybay Public Library and the literacy arts on the whole, Mr. Rudolph Bisasa Singh. Let us give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I would like to say welcome. I'm seeing my past teacher here. I always have to make acknowledgements before I start any proceeding. I'm seeing my friends here. I'm seeing Dawad here. I'm seeing Gersha here. I'm seeing Krishna in the back here. I'm seeing Judy here, right? I'm seeing my longtime teacher, Tony, and friend, you understand? And I have to acknowledge them. And I acknowledge all of you as friends. I acknowledge all of you as friends. So welcome. We begin the proceedings, and I just like to give a little joke. If you find during the course of events, I like to lighten up the event. You know, I was in charge of writing programs for common entrance. I was teaching in the primary school system. And somebody obscenely suggested that we ask the children to write the first two words of the national anthem. Right? 90% of the participants wrote, "Fudge from the love of liberty." So before I start the anthem, I just want to remind everybody, the words are forged from the love of liberty. Could we all stand for the anthem? Now the anthem is written in a 3/4 beat, right? Hear this beat, eh? Da 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 da. So why we just drag the anthem for? I'll start and we'll all sing along. Forged from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare. Side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea. This our native land, we pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race finds an equal place, and may God bless our nation. You can all have your seat. Thank you very much, and you all sounded wonderful. Wonderful. Now, we'll now have an opening prayer by, I'm not saying the name of the person here. Where's Moti? Moti, who is doing the opening prayer? My brother, my teacher, my friend, he nearly became my kutni at a point in time. The Honorable, the timeless Ralph Umrao. Could we all bow our heads and pray?
Let's bow our heads in prayer. Almighty and eternal God, we have come with humility, love, and affection to pay tribute to you, dear God. Today, we are paying tribute to a son of the soil, a young, dynamic, wonderful creature of the area in the Pinal. We thank you, Lord, for his wisdom and knowledge, for expressing his ideas vividly, impressively, and bringing stories that will lighten up our lives, O Lord. We thank you, Lord, for every person present here. We ask you to give the chairman the wisdom and knowledge to guide the destiny of our meeting here today. Lord, continue to guide us, protect us, and save us from all harm and danger. Today we are living in a world of crisis. Where in the world can we find peace and love? And I think we can find peace and love in our Aajee and Nani Kahanis. So Lord, continue to guide us, protect us, and save us from all harm and danger. And continue to bless this beautiful land, Trinidad and Tobago. All these blessings, O Father, I ask in the precious name of our Lord and Savior. Amen.
I have the great honor this morning to be the chairperson for this morning's proceedings. I have known Mr. Motilal Boodoosingh for more than 25 years. I met him through my son when he showed an interest in his collection of antique cars. During this time, I found Moti to be a gentleman, always polite, courteous, respectful, but he comes every now and again to have a confession by me. He says, you know, I lived a terrible life. So we always sing this song, I have lived a life of sin. But Moti is no sinner. Moti is a saint. A sinner is a saint reformed, and vice versa. Moti has been a friend of the family. He has been with us here in tough times. But what is very, very important about Moti, his profession was one of an offshore production engineer. But he had this love for storytelling. As most people who come from Penal, Ralph also has a love for storytelling. Ralph could tell a good story. Well, Tony is the master of storytelling. Master of story. Dawad in his own right is a master at storytelling. So we all have stories to tell. In looking at the philosophies of life, people ask, what is there to life? What is the story of life? What lies beyond death? One day I asked my uncle, who was a very learned scholar from Cambridge, I said, Uncle Wilfred, when you die, what do you carry? He said, oh, you carry a lot of things, you know. I said, really, like what? He said, your DNA lives in your subconscious and carries with it all the stories that you have gathered in your lifetime. All the stories that you have gathered, they do not die with you. You carry them to another existence. And I pondered on that through the years. And I asked myself, are we really sharing our stories with the people around us? Why do I want to hear Moti's story? Why do I want to hear Kamta's story? Why do I want to hear Dawad's story? Why do I want to hear Judy's story and Krishna's story? Why do I want to hear these stories? Is it because it's the natural macromacious nature of a Trinidadian to hear people's stories? Maybe it's part of that. Maybe it's part of that. But at 72, Moti switched from his field of engineering and cars and buildings and all of that and pursued adult literacy, and he gave freely of his time with Alta. And his love for literature, he started to seek out new friends, a new circle of people. As we go through life, do not keep the same friends you have all the time. This is my advice to you. You know, many years ago I said a person should change their companion every 10 years. Somebody say your wife too. Right? I'm not sure about that, but we should all seek. I taught in 8 schools. Ralph, how many schools you taught in? About 8 schools too. And I never kept associating with the people that I work with as colleagues. I always look for different things. Right now at this stage in my life, I'm 65, I have started a new circle of friends. But I have kept Moti as a friend. He holds a BA in Literature and Communication, as well as his certificate in the teaching of reading. He also has an adult literacy tutor certificate, and he earned the right to be labeled as a Cropper Fellow after he successfully completed in 2016 the Cropper Foundation Residential Workshop for Caribbean Writers. I think this is his 4th book. I thoroughly enjoyed. I never grew up in Penal. I grew up with the tough and the rough, just like Mr. Tony Dial in Siparia. It was a totally different landscape. When I got married in Rock Road, Penal Rock Road, and had to teach in Penal, wow, that came as a cultural shock for me. It was a cultural shock. I never knew anything about Hinduism. I never knew anything about the customs of East Indian people in Penal and Davie. You understand? Was always pork and wine and rum in Superior. Card playing, cricket, football, cycling, weightlifting. Tony will tell you, I had a great love for weightlifting and bodybuilding. I spent 27 years in it. 27 years. And we have a common friend who was one of the greatest wrestlers that Trinidad and Tobago has ever seen, Ray Apollon. He was one of my coaches. You understand? And don't go and play headbutt with him. You will feel that coconut so devastating. You will see stars and you'll see what the Kepler telescope cannot see up to today. Right? So it was a totally different lifestyle. But when Moti started to share his stories about growing up in Davie and Penal, it intrigued me because we didn't have children who adored their parents in Superior. No. We didn't have that. There was no adoration of parents in the community of Superior. I taught in Superior. I taught in Superior Senior Comprehensive and Superior East Secondary School. And respect for parents? No, that was very few and far between. But when I came to Penal, I taught in Penal Junior Secondary, I taught in Penal Presbyterian School, I taught in Penal Rock Presbyterian School, I taught in San Francisco Press. The children actually pedestalized their parents. And I found that unusual. And this is what Moti has done in his recent book. He is pedestalizing his ancestors. Do we pedestalize our ancestors? No. What about your daddy? Oh, I don't have a daddy, you know. I have a stepfather. You mean you have a stepfather? What is that? What's a stepfather? Oh, that's when my father step out, he just step in. Yeah, and this is what I learned in Superior. So when I saw the adoration that Moti had for his ancestors and decided to share these stories, whether he's successful, whether he's not successful, whether it's financially profiteering out of it, it doesn't matter. He has given us his persuasion towards his ancestors. They say if we do not know where we come from, we do not know where we are going. But if we do not know what were the values of our ancestors, we are wallowing. With this, I would like to introduce my past literature and English teacher. If you find I could speak well, it's because I listened to old talk from him for years. Right? He was the master of the vernacular. He was the master of the Queen's English. He was a master in literature. He proved himself in journalism. He started the first digital newspaper, My Trinidad, to which I introduced Tony and Moti, right? I also was a participant in the process. Right now, there are other things that occupy my time. But I have, with greatest pleasure, to bring words of greeting to Motilal Boodoosingh, Mr. Tony Dia. Let's hear a round of applause for him.
Thank you, sir. Superior, that's we home, right? I will know people when I say pronounce S-I-P-A-R-I-A, and they say superior. Once they hear superior, they're from we. In honor of my colleague here, who I have never seen without a hat, I bring my own. Some years ago, I had the idea, and something that I've always known is that Trinidad and Tobago only become Trinidad and Tobago because the British found they were close together. And so it was easy for one person to manage Trinidad and Tobago. But they are two totally different countries, totally different. And this is why I got my friends here, to join and to be part of my Trinidad yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And it is on behalf of that organization, because the present person in charge, Johnny, cannot be here. Man Singh, he would have loved to be here, he wanted to be here, but he's quite ill. And couldn't make it, and I told him, well, I will come as the person who started my Trinidad, because Moti is very much my Trinidad. He has been part of it from the day I started it and has continued. The impressive thing about Moti, you know, let me put it this way. He is a good person. And if I look at his work, I think of what I call the good, the bad, and not the ugly. Because definitely not ugly. I mean, you look at the man and you realize, I mean, look at him out there. But more, I'm not talking about his face, but his head, what's here. Not his hands, but his writing. So this is why I call his work the good, the bad, and the googly. Because sometimes he, like Shahidi, not Afridi, but Afridi, he take you by surprise. You're going along and reading about this one, this and this one, and the village and thing, and suddenly he drop a googly on you. And that is what, for me, is part of his style. All of us have our own styles, and we add and hopefully add value to my Trinidad or our own work or books and things. But he has his own style and has done very well with it and gone very far with it. What he has delivered here, though, what he has developed here, is something I am hoping that all the other people in my Trinidad who are writers or who are part of my Trinidad will also do in the communities where they are. I was talking to one of our colleagues and I said, you know, I want to offer 10 people to work with me to do this combination that I do of humor, but my humor always has a little place inside it of hard talk, of serious stuff. Read all around it, and I'm hoping that I could get 10 people who are willing to work like that with me from different parts of Trinidad and Tobago, so they could do that. And Moti has done that in his style in this place, and I'm hoping that more of my colleagues will do that. But he's the setter for this. He set this up, and every time I've come here, I'm impressed, but I feel good that we brought him into something, I got him involved in it, and he is opening to the bigger world. And there's nothing like it. I am really hoping so. So Moti, my hat off to you, wife. You take care.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dial. And really, what is Trinidad without humor? Even in the roughest of times, humor brings that sense of ease of tension. Dingoli. Now I have the pleasure to introduce my co-host, Miss Shahira Ali, who is described here by Moti as a very articulate reader, a member of the poetry and prose. She never fails to delight us with her charming voice. You know, one of the worst things is to get married to a woman who have a raucous voice, that one. Man, that is jar. You understand? Even if she tell you good morning in the morning, good morning. That is set a kind of tone. I was standing in a line buying a piece of sada roti in Saparia, and this young lady said, "Hi, sir." I turned around. I said, "Could I tape your voice?" She said, "Why?" I said, "I want to change my, how you call it? Alexia, Google thing home. I'll go on home and I take the taping of her voice. And Alexia suddenly seems so attractive. You know, I fire my maid. I get rid of my companion, Ralph. And I start a new life. Hear what Alexia tell me. How was your day? Would you like me to put on the coffee maker? Are you having problems with your knee again? Wow, you need to sit down and relax. I say, wow, technology, technology. In Japan right now, Kamta, many people are not getting married. The birth rate is right down because the Japanese male are more entranced, mesmerized, and hypnotized by their technology. Hi, darling. How was your day? No, let's not discuss that. What's your favorite movie? So I have the pleasure to introduce my second half here, Shahira, whose voice will mesmerize you, right? And to tell you that part of today's proceeding is going to be technologically based, where we will be zooming with people in Canada and in America to make their contributions. So let's all welcome Ms. Shahira Ali, who will introduce Fast and Furious Part 1 to 5, the other performers. Shahira. And I like that name, Shahira. Nice name. We could do better than that. You understand? Nice, nice.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready? I certainly am. At this time, it is with great pleasure I introduce to you someone who will be performing a song. Brandon is a talented musician and singer. A devoted member of the Susuland Temple, he is always willing to share with us at the library. And the name of the song that he will be performing for us at this time is Ma Sunao Mujhe Ho Kahani. And that is translated as, Mother, tell me a story. So let us hear it for Vasash, Brandon, Hari Persad. What a lovely rendition. Now, at this time, we are going to have Willard Gopal, and he will be reading for us a story. He is a consummate theatrical actor and director. A friend of poetry and prose, he is always willing to share his talents with us. Willard Gopal will be reading a story entitled Diwali, Ramlila, and the Ramayana. Let us give him a round of applause.
Morning, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I first would like to congratulate whom I refer to as affectionately as Mr. B on the publication of his new book, and thank him for this pleasure to read this piece from his new publication. And it's very timely as we are entering the season of this piece, Aajee or Nani, Kahanis. Congratulations. So this is entitled Diwali, Ramlila, and the Ramayana. So it says here the months of September and October are especially reverential for Hindus. In Trinidad, we have just observed Ganesh Ustav, worship to Lord Ganesh, the remover of obstacles. Pitri Paksh, or as we call it here, Peter Pak, tribute to the ancestors, and then the period of Navratri, when puja is done to the 9 forms of Mother Durga, emphasizing the importance of womanhood in the Hindu scriptures. Diwali Nagara celebration is currently underway, and the festival of Kartik comes up later in the month. Most of these events are referenced in the Ramayana, which can be described as the source of Hinduism in Trinidad and the Caribbean. The Ramlila celebrations have just been completed, having started on Friday, September 30th. In many villages throughout this land. Ramlila is a dramatic open-air reenactment of the Ramayana by village folk that takes place in various parks and recreation grounds. Some examples of excellent performances are by the groups the Pandavas in Palmist Park, the St. John's Ramlila group in Avocat, Faizabad, and the Taruba Ramlila in Marabella. There are many more excellent productions, but I have attended at these venues and can attest to their cultural brilliance. Diwali is widely celebrated in Trinidad and Tobago, with many festivities taking place in villages and towns. Special mention must be made of Diwali Nagar in Chaguanas and the Diwali village of Felicity. Elsewhere, villagers light up their recreation grounds and stage performances about Diwali. These are usually done in the week preceding Diwali Day, which sees thousands of homes becoming illuminated with thousands of diyas. The scenes in the Ramlila and Diwali plays takes me back to primary school at Suchet Trace Hindu, where Mr. Ramrup Mahabir, an accomplished exponent of the Ramayana, was the principal then. I can remember to this day his teaching my class in 1962, the Chopai depicting Lord Rama's plea to Mother Sita to remain at home while he proceeds to banishment in the forest for 14 years. So we sang, Janaki Shore Janaki Pan Priye Mama Pran Mai Banvas Tu Naat Hu Vachan Matu Pituman, meaning, O loving daughter of King Janak, who is dearer to me than life itself, I am going into exile in order to validate a promise made by my father. Here Mr. Ramrup reminded us, which meant, may I lose my life instead of breaking a promise. The Chopai continues as Rama outlines the many hardships that living in the forest would bring, as opposed to remaining in the palace. He talks about the poverty and difficulties and the dangers from the wild animals living there. He even tries the guilt trip trick, telling her that she will gain benefits from God if she stays at home and takes care of her mother and father-in-law. But Mother Sita, who is sometimes seen as the first feminist, replies, Prema pujaya mahe prabhu kam kare na pati ke tan ke do khus hai patni rai dukh paan patni bina patni gati aisi jal bina machhari kara. Emphasizing that a wife's place is with her husband and vice versa, saying a husband and wife separated from each other is like fish taken out of the water, luxury without companionship, and jewel ornaments become burdens to the body when one is separated from one's love. Her eloquent arguments persuade Rama to take her with him. Another scene from the Ramayana that is seldom told or enacted, but which I really love, tells of the time that Hanuman and Lord Rama's army was building a bridge from India to Lanka so they could get there and engage Ravan and his army in battle. Every day they would put stones and rocks into the sea going towards Lanka. The work is hard and progress is slow, but little by little they are getting nearer to Lanka. One morning, Hanuman wakes up to find that much of the bridge has been destroyed. He is puzzled but continues to construct. When the same thing happens again, he decides to stay up in the night to see what is causing the destruction. As Hanuman watches, he sees an army of mermaids working as diligently as his own army, and they are being led by the mermaid queen, Servan Macharia, which translates to goldfish. They had been hired by Ravan to destroy the bridge. Hanuman begs her to stop, but she refuses. Hanuman then tells her about the kidnapping of Sita by Ravan and began to woo her by praising her beauty. I can imagine Hanuman, Trini Chutney style, singing, Macharya girl, you make it, but I love you real hard. But I will leave that version for another time. Eventually, she relents and the bridge is completed. Hanuman and his army celebrate by lighting diyas and singing praises to Lord Rama. Rama's army reaches Lanka and Ravan is defeated. Sita is rescued and Ravan's kingdom is given to the pious Vibhishan. By this time, the 14-year-old period of exile has been completed. The performance of Rama's return to Ayodhya in the Ramlila is a sight to behold. The entire population goes to meet Lord Rama, Sita, and Lakshman as they are coming home from exile. Everyone is delighted and the streets of Ayodhya lit with thousands of diyas to light the pathway. Legend has it that this is the origin of Diwali celebrations. The villagers are dancing and singing as they welcome the Lord.
राम से मिले राम से मिले सखी राम से मिले राम से मिले सखी राम से मिले श्री राम अयोध्या में आए चलो रे सखी राम से मिले चलो रे सखी राम से मिले.
To all Trinis, if there is a Ramlila near to you, attend if you can. You will be amazed and entertained. And as we always do, whether Hindu or not, let us all celebrate Diwali. Let us light the pathways of life with kindness, caring, and sharing our knowledge and culture. Sri Ramcharita Kaijai. Happy Diwali to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very informative and entertaining story. Now, you know, before the pandemic, people never used to be on this thing called Zoom. But now, with all the technology that is evolving in our digital world, there is something called a Zoom platform. So, you know, people from all over the world can participate. And straight to Zoom we go right now. And we have a lady by the name of Cynthia M. Birch. And she is a retired teacher, grammar police, and a treasured member of poetry and prose. And she will be reading a story entitled Flying Kites. Let us hear it for her.
Thank you so very much, Shahira, for that delightful introduction. I really hope that some of it is true. And I'm very honored by Mr. Motilal Boodoosingh to have been chosen to read a piece, Flying Kites 1. Flying kites is a popular pastime all over the world. A kite is a device that rises in the air and floats while being tethered by a string. It can be small, large, light or heavy, plain or decorative as the flyer chooses. Kites are flown for pleasure as a relaxing hobby, in competitions, in religious and cultural celebrations, for scientific and military purposes, and all similar occasions. In an earlier time, they served as a device to access information from different locations. Kites are named after the kite bird, a type of hawk that flies gracefully. Kites first appeared in Asia, especially China and India, and are spoken of in their folk legends. There is a story about General Han Xin, a Chinese commanding soldier, who in about the year 200 BC used kite flying to win a battle against an enemy who was thought to be invincible, because his palace was heavily guarded with thousands of soldiers all around the walls, and they would rain arrows at anyone approaching. The general thought long and hard, and finally came up with a plan whereby they would dig a tunnel and gain access to the inside, lock the soldiers out, capture the king and his family, force him to surrender, and instruct his soldiers to lay down their arms. Since the terrain to get to the castle was hilly, there was no way Hans could measure the distance to know when his soldiers could start digging upwards to get inside the palace. So they would be underground and unable to see when they had reached inside the walls. Finally, he saw a solution to this difficult problem. He ordered his men to make a kite using bamboo sticks and silk material and a long tail that could touch the palace. The length of the tail was known. The length of the kite was also known. And as the kite was launched, the length of the string could be measured. As the kite flew above the palace, the king's soldiers laughed. They felt this was a sign that Hans was sending a signal of surrender, as no one had ever heard of kites being weapons of war. However, with the distances from the flyer via the string of the kite and tail which was touching the palace, Hans was able to calculate using geometry the distance to which the tunnel should be built. With this information, Hans's soldiers were able to dig the tunnel to the castle, capture it in a surprise raid, and win the battle. The kite is credited to be a prototype for the modern drone. Let us now turn to neighboring India and examine some of the kite flying traditions. Kite flying is a part of many festivals and religious celebrations, as kites are thought to reach near the abode of the gods. One such festivity, which was celebrated only last Saturday, is Makar Sankranti. This festival is associated with worship of the sun god Surya, and Surya Puja was performed in many temples in our own Trinidad. In India, however, flying kites and kite competitions accompany the pujas. Another tradition is flying kites on India's Independence Day, and at the end of the exercise, letting the kite loose to signify the cutting of ties with the colonial England. The Hindi word for kite is patang. Do you know that in India, culture and festivities, there are songs composed especially for kite flying? You all know, and I'm always looking forward to a chance to sing. So here goes the choir.
जैसे उड़न खटोला उड़ जाए लेखे मन में लगन जैसे कोई दुल्हन चले जाए रे संवरिया की गली चली चली रे पतंग,
which Motilal has provided. This translates to "There goes my kite. It flies past the clouds. On its string it goes, while the world looks on with envy. It sways in the wind like a flying chariot, with love in its heart, like a new bride going to her beloved's house." Now for a story from Pinal, Trinidad, about a kite. A poor father and his son once attended a Makar Sankranti puja at the local temple. When the puja was finished, the bigger boys and young men began flying kites. The boy was very happy to see all the beautiful kites of so many colors floating in the air. He wanted to try his hand at flying, but the bigger boys were afraid he would let the string go, so no one wanted to give him a chance. He asked his father to buy him a kite, but the father did not have enough money. They went home dejected. At home, the father decided to make a kite for his son. He bought a sheet of paper that was used for papering school books and which cost 1 cent. With broomsticks from the yard's cocoyer broom, for his wife would not allow him to take from the newer inside broom, and with a paste made with flour and water, he constructed a kite. Cloth torn from one of his wife's old dresses was used as a tail. Since the kite was not too large, a bobbin of thread from the mother's sewing basket was taken. Off they went to the nearby Bakai recreation ground in Gopi Trace to fly their kite. The son was very happy as his kite went high in the air. However, they had only a limited amount of thread, and soon the kite could go no farther. After a while, the son said, "Papa, it seems as if the thread is preventing the kite from going higher. What if we let it go? Wouldn't our kite reach the sky?" Suddenly, he let go of the thread. The kite rose for a while and then began to fall, and it came down in Bob's rice lagoon, where it became soaked with water and mud and was ruined. The little boy became very sad and began crying. When his father promised to make him another kite, he felt better. Meanwhile, poor Daddy was thinking what he would tell his wife when she asked about her thread. The lesson here is that God has given us parents, friends, and loved ones to keep us grounded and happy. Sometimes we may feel that we no longer need our parents or those like our teachers who want us to obey rules and follow advice. These folks are the ones who are like the thread that prevents us from crashing. Let us be mindful and not become too swell-headed and ignore the advice of those who love us. Thank you very much.
We thank the person facilitating, Ms. Gusha Mahaber, who has been sitting there smiling right through. She's a tremendous scholar in her own right and has done so many things. I never knew that she was so good on the technology. Thank you, Ms. Gusha. Thank you. Now, I am sure that, listen, I'm not talking for the ladies here. I'm not talking for no ladies. I'm talking for the male folk here. We cannot get tired of hearing Miss Ali's voice. If I listen from now until the next maybe 15, 20 years of my life, will I why you laughing, boy? Will I why laughing? No pull up my pants. No pull up my pants. Will I laughing? Yes. Her voice is so hypnotic, and I want to welcome her back to the podium because she's going to do a reading called Dance. But I want to give a little thing about dance. You know, Tony, we grew up in an area where people could dance. In Pinal and Deve, it's only Indian dance. It's good, eh? But when you really want to see dance, you come down Real Street Safaria. Go down Ritoville. Go down Poco Alley and Coconut Alley. Man, you will see dance. And you know, it reminded me of this song, Tony. Every time I pass, you look at me. Every time I pass, you look at me. I would tell my mama, don't send me down there. That comes from Superior, no? Now, how do you know that? That comes from Superior. Yes. And this is the thing about it. Dance is an integral part. You know, we had a girl going up for Miss Grand International. Hear what somebody say. She's a Venny. She's a Venny. We don't want you. She don't look like a trainee. Right? I see that girl dance. So I wrote on the Express. I don't care if the whole of Trinidad saying she's not a trainee and this and that. Just take my number, honey. 649 He-Man. You understand? Corey Village Superior, Brook Garden. You understand? And in case you want any sponsor for the show, just call on me. And I'll ask my friend Ralph to give an extra $2,000 towards that. I write that on the Express. 159,000 hate mail I get. Yes, we'll have 159,000 hate mail, but you know that didn't matter because she write back. She said, "I'll take you up on the offer." I feel so good, eh? You understand? And I'll feel even better after I hear Miss Ali's voice in her rendition of the piece Dance. Miss Ali, let's hear it from Miss Ali.
First of all, before I begin, I would like to thank you, Rudolph, for that lovely compliment. Now, without further ado, let's begin. So, dance. To dance is to move with rhythm following a sequence of steps. It can signify joy, celebration, worship, or being subjected to a powerful emotion. Dance is also an excellent form of exercise. It burns calories, strengthens muscles, increases flexibility, improves balance, and gives the heart a good workout. As the many folks who participate in the various dance classes at the Faizabad Regional Community Complex can readily attest to. In addition, it is a great way to socialize and build friendships. Dance has been present in the mythology, culture, and religion of all peoples, and has been a very important part of ceremony, rituals, entertainment, and worship in early civilizations, and continues to do so to this day. There are many stories about how dance started. I want to share a short story that my Aajee told me and my sisters many years ago. Long ago, the people in an island near India lived with no contact outside their area. They lived a simple life, planting and reaping crops, hunting in the forests and fishing in the rivers, and thought that their island was the entire world. They did not have any gods, did not know about any musical instruments, and had never danced. But as time went by, they became curious and wanted to know what lay beyond the mountains and forests. One day, the headman and some hunters set out on a journey and went deep into the forest and high up the mountains. As it became evening and the darkness came upon them, they decided to camp for the night because they were afraid of what danger might be in the woods. They huddled together in front of a small wooden fire and trembled whenever they heard the sounds of the wind through the trees, the birds screeching, or now and again wild animals making frightful noises. Suddenly, the place became eerie silent, and there became a strange sound filled the air. It was something they had never heard before, but somehow it sounded pleasant to their ears, and as if by magic, their fears disappeared. Making torches out of dry branches, they decided to follow the sounds which seemed to be coming from not far away. They were amazed by what they saw. Many beautiful beings who looked just like them were all in a circle, some sitting and beating with their hands what looked like short pieces of tree trunks, and some were holding twigs in their mouths and making sweet sounds. For they knew nothing about drums and flutes. Inside the circle, others were moving gracefully in a rhythm and sequence of steps. They had stumbled on the gods, making sweet music and dancing. Suddenly, the music stopped, and one of the gods said, "There are humans nearby. I can smell them." The chief of the gods answered, "Whether you smell man or beast, bring them here. For we must do them no harm, but teach them." When the men joined the gods, they found their feet, hands, and body moving as if they had a life of their own, and they merged with the dancers, experiencing a joy they had never known before. The gods told them that they should worship the gods, make offerings, and have regular services, where they must offer prayers and sing and dance to honor the gods. The men danced and danced until they became exhausted and fell asleep. When they awoke in the morning, the gods were nowhere to be seen. They began to wonder if they had dreamt the whole thing, until they noticed 2 drums and 2 flutes on the ground. The men returned to their village to make drums and flutes patterned after those the gods left for them, and they learned how to play them. In this manner, it is said that men learned about music and dance, and music and dance became an essential part of worship in many religions. And that's it for me in this story. Hope you enjoyed.
Wow. You know what I thought of listening here? Recently, my sister and my daughter co-published a book on legends and folklore. It has been on the market for the past 2 weeks. So I asked my daughter, I said, how is the sales going? She said, well, she sold about 500 to 700 copies in the first week. I said, and what are you working on now? She said, Pa, I'm not working on a physical book, no. I said, what? She said, I'm working on an e-book and a voice book. I said, what? She said, Pa, I've sold more copies of the e-book and the voice book pre-ordered than the physical book. And when I heard Miss Ali's voice, I have to make note of this. I'm not supposed to be standing here and saying this, but I have to make note that, listen, I have to be your manager and sign contracts for you. Because she is sitting down there on the tip of a diamond. If you looked at IETV through the years, you will see those little cartoons where they have these little cutout figures and they tell the story of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and all of that. And the person who narrates it is nowhere close to what we have in front of us today. Sometimes we do not recognize the diamond that we have in our midst. Miss, thanks a lot. I really appreciated that. And I think that if there are people here who would like to go forward, I know Kamta always messing around in technology, right? To create these cartoons about our life, our stories, our experiences, and to have Miss Ali as a narrator. Randy, what do you think about that? Yeah, I know. Yeah, it just flashed through my mind, and I had to move her to give her credit for that, because you see, many times in teaching students, I teach some students at the University of the West Indies, and they say, oh, you know, sir, we plateau out and everything has been done before and this and no, we are scratching the surface. I listen to Willard also, and Willard is a great male voice. And I'm saying to myself, why can't we have more voice books? Trudy, why can't we have more voice books? Why can't we have more cartoons? How do we pass on our experiences to generation next? And I know Tony will grasp this idea. I see he wake up from his slumber there when he hear me, right? It is such a wonderful opportunity to have this diamond in our midst. And even this singing, I want to compliment you at this point, the lady who's sitting next with the glasses there. Wow, you have a tremendous voice, ma'am. Wow. I was totally taken away. What's your name, miss? What's your name? I'm not hearing. Vilma? Vilma, what a great voice you have. Great. So I'll invite back Miss Ali to introduce the next person, And well done, miss. Well done.
Well, Rudolph, I would like to thank you once again. Up next, we have a lady by the name of Arlene Q.U. Penna, and she is a member of Poetry and Prose. She lived in San Fernando and moved to New York at 14. She studied theater arts at NYU and creative writing at the New School, later earning an MFA in fiction from Southern New Hampshire University. She lives in Florida and is working on several writing projects. And now she will be reading a story entitled Revenge. Let us hear it for her.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Motilal, for inviting me to attend this wonderful event, to read your beautiful story. Revenge. Storytelling is an art that has survived the ages. However, many fairy tales and legends behind them are actually the diluted versions of uncomfortable and gruesome historical events. As children, we were told stories not only as entertainment, but as cautionary messages to teach us moral lessons, as in Aesop's fables, or that obeying one's parents will keep us safe from harm. Albert Einstein, the great scientist, said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. In addition to the storybooks at school, Grimm's fairy tales, Andersen fairy tales, and others, my grandmother treated us to a diet of stories she brought from her ancestors from India. Some more delightful tales about princes and princesses, kings and queens, or heroes who saved their village from disaster. But there were many that were scary and horrifying. I remember my grandmother sitting us down in the darkness as she told us some of the creepiest stories. Although we were scared, we always seemed to prefer the stories that frightened us the most. Let me share one of my grandmother's hair-raising stories. There was once a man and his wife who had an only son. They lived in a small village, and as was the custom of the time, they had arranged while the son was still a boy for him to be married to his mother's rich relative when he grew up. As the boy became a young man, he fell in love with another village girl. She had no parents and grew up with her brother, who was poor. His greedy mother was furious, but the boy wouldn't budge. The dowry was small, but the grasping mother took it all, as well as the bride's jewelry. The father-in-law was all right, but the mother-in-law was cruel. Every day after the father and son went to work, she treated the new bride with brutality. She had to clean, wash, cook, and lay the floor. If she wasn't satisfied, she beat the daughter-in-law. Sometimes she wasn't given food. She bore it all and said nothing to her husband and father-in-law. But this did not make things better. The old woman was plotting how to get rid of her. One day, when the son and husband went to work in the fields, she put the poor girl in a bag, tied it up, and placed it on her bull cart and headed for the cremation ground. She planned to put her on a stack of wood and burn her. The girl tried to scream, but her mouth was tied. As she was about to light the pyre, the woman realized that she had forgotten her matches and went back home to get some. Meanwhile, there were 3 watchmen at the cremation site. They saw the bag atop the sack of wood. It was wiggling. Curious, they approached and opened it. They screamed when the girl rolled out, thinking that the dead had come alive. And being very frightened, they began chanting a prayer from the holy Ramayana. Meaning, all ghosts and demons and evil forces disappear at the mention of your name, O Lord. As they became calm, they freed the girl who told them her story. They were all afraid of the old woman, so they filled the sacks with charcoal and other burnt materials from the cremation ground and put it back in the pyre, hid and waited. Sure enough, the old woman returned singing.
Even me, your mama and papa, and your son who married a rich man's daughter.
They soaked the bag with pitch oil and watched happily as it began to burn. Later in the evening, the girl began the long journey towards her village, intending to go back to her brother's home. The evening came and she was tired. Soon she came to a Ganesha temple and she stopped to rest. As she was sleeping, 3 thieves arrived. They had stolen jewels and fine clothing from a rich man's house, and the police were after them. They decided to hide the loot among the murtis in the temple so they would not be caught with it. Anyone who has visited a Hindu temple would know that the murtis are decorated with much jewelry. When the police arrived, there were no jewelry to be seen, and they left. All that time, at this time, the girl hiding behind the largest murti of Lord Ganesh, the protector, was praying. Asking Lord Ganesh for protection. Lord Ganesh answered, Beti, you will always be under my protection. Take the stolen jewelries from the murti, for they are inauspicious for us. Let this be a gift from the gods, and may it help you from your poverty. She dressed herself with the jewels and fine clothes and went to the mother-in-law's house. The old lady was shocked. She asked, "It's me, your daughter-in-law," was the reply. "But how? I burnt you." "You did burn me, but I went to heaven and I met my mama and papa, and they said I was too young to be dead and to take these jewels and go back to my home and have a happy life. So I came back here." "Really?" said the greedy old woman. "Then you must burn me too, so I could meet my parents and get jewels from them." The girl refused, and the old hag called her ungrateful and went to the cremation site and paid a large sum of money to the watchmen who knew what she was and were only too glad to carry out her wishes. Thank you, Motilal.
Now, one of the courses that I teach is iconography and symbolism. And a lot of people do not know this, but one of the greatest minds of the 20th century was Stan Lee with Marvel Comics. And Stan Lee, in his later years, admitted that he never came up with these concepts of Spider-Man and Superman and things just in a vacuum. He said when he wanted to create a superhero, he turned to the mythology of India and Africa So someone turned and asked him, how did he come up with the concept of Spider-Man? He said, well, when I listened to the African tales of Anansi the spider, and right now I'm working on a really great book on how the colonizers, the imperialists, demonize the mythology of India and Africa. And we perpetuate it. I had a young lady, I won't call her name, because I do not know where these videos could go and I don't have money for lawyers, that she paints all these blue devils of Paramin and blue devils and everybody in blue and this and that. I said, miss, you need to spend a little time and do some research. I said, when the Hindu nation first came as indentured servants, they were being demonized by the Catholic Church as pagans, as satanic. And because of the fact that they used the washing blue to draw their Radha and Krishna and all the deities in this blue color on their jupas and their tapia walls, it became a symbol of ridicule, where they were being denigrated at carnival time by people painting themselves in the same blue. I say you need to stop doing this. You're propagating something that is wrong. And even in dealing with African mythology and the story of Anansi and all of that, when the African man was portrayed as lazy, as good for nothing, as not wanting land, Anansi, coming out of Africa, was portrayed as cunning, as ambitious, as intellectual, as outsmarting his neighbors. Mandela, when he said, listen, we describe South Africans as lazy and we don't want to work the land. He said, when I stand here and I look on Kwazaland, he said, I'm looking at 1,000 miles of the land of my ancestors. Why is there the need for fences? Why is there the need for boundaries? Why is there the need for borders? Who draws these borders? So in dealing with iconography and symbolism, we are going to have our next reading on Hanuman, the first superhero. And I want to introduce a really great guy. You know, he's by profession an engineer, but he's a very sociable guy, a very friendly guy, very warm guy. He has been with Moti for some years. I met him here so many years ago. And Randy Ablak is no stranger to be having a love for literature and poetry. And he's going to do this reading, Hanuman, the first superhero. We welcome with a round of applause, Mr. Randy Ablak.
Hi, good morning.
Thus starts the most famous verse in the poem, the Hanuman Chalisa, giving praise to Lord Hanuman and pledging to uphold moral law, be free from pursuing wealth, free from desire, and the cycle of life and death. Long before Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, there was Hanuman. But he wasn't just all muscles. He had a broad spectrum of skills. He was also intelligent, patient, compassionate, ready to help humanity, graceful, humble, and of course, immensely strong. He could fly, become heavy or weightless as the occasion demanded, shrink or grow when desired, run faster than the wind, and had superb intelligence and infinite patience. Hanuman is a Hindu god and a companion of Lord Ram. He is a central character in the Hindu holy book, the Ramayana. He is one of the most popular gods in the Hindu religion and is worshipped to this day by Hindus all over the world. There are millions of temples dedicated to Hanuman's worship that span the entire earth. In fact, he has more fans than all the modern-day superheroes put together. He remains in Hinduism as an example of the ideal man because of his service to others. Isn't this true of all superheroes? Their greatness comes from what they have done for others rather than what they do for their own benefit. Like most superheroes, Hanuman gets his powers from the gods. Lord Brahma decreed that no weapon would ever hurt Hanuman, and that he would be able to change his form at will and travel wherever he chose. The god Indra's boon was that his body would withstand any weapon. Varuna, the god of the ocean, offered him protection from water. Agni, the god of fire, blessed him with the immunity to fire. Surya, the sun god, gave him the power to change the size of his body. Yama, lord of death, blessed him with good health and immortality. Hanuman's Gada de Mukhtar, as is called in Trinidad, is carried in his right hand. It is his main weapon, and it is said to be the model for the hammer of Thor. While there are many attestations of numerous miracles because of Hanuman's worship, today I want to share a few stories about Hanuman taken from the Hindu mythology that demonstrates his superpowers. According to the Ramayana, Ram gave Hanuman the task of going across the oceans to look for Sita and to reassure her of his love. Effortlessly, Hanuman crossed every barrier that came in his way and flew across the oceans to reach the city of Lanka. The city was heavily guarded all around, and nothing was able to pass. Hanuman shrank himself to the size of a mosquito and entered and assured Sita that Ram was on his way to rescue her. In another story, this time from the Mahabharata, Hanuman encounters another superhero, Bhima, who has similar powers. Hanuman pretends he is a sick monkey and lies down on the road in the path of Bhima. Bhima arrogantly demands that Hanuman moves. Hanuman says that he is too ill to move, and that Bhima lift his tail and pass. When Bhima tries to lift the tail, he finds out that he is unable to do so. Many of us who have seen Ram Leela celebrations know the story of the burning of Lanka. Hanuman allows himself to be captured by Ravan's soldiers. They decide that a fitting punishment for him would be death by burning, but he has been granted the boon of immunity of fire from the fire god Agni. When he is wrapped with cloth and other flammable materials and set afire, Hanuman makes himself larger and larger. He then runs through the entire city, torching all the buildings and burning Lanka to the ground. Like many superheroes, Hanuman has a weakness. Sometimes he forgets things. When he was a child, he would play tricks on the sages. They became angry and cursed him with forgetfulness. Once during a battle between Ram and Ravan's army, Lakshman, Ram's brother, was seriously wounded. Hanuman was entrusted to bring the healing herb, the Sajuan, from the Himalaya mountain. When he arrived by flying, he forgets which herb he is supposed to get, and there are so many. So Hanuman lifts the entire mountain and takes it to the wounded Lakshman. Meaning, you brought the herb and saved Lakshman's life. Lord Ram is grateful to you. When Hanuman informs Ram that he has found Sita imprisoned in Lanka, Ram asks him to build a bridge to Sri Lanka from India so Ram's armies can reach the city. Hanuman and his band of monkeys began throwing huge boulders into the sea to make a foundation for the bridge. After a while, they noticed something is wrong. They tell Hanuman that each day they throw rocks into the sea, and the next day they are gone. Hanuman decides to investigate. With a few volunteers, they swim into the ocean. There, they find a large number of mermaids underwater. As they watch, a new rock is tossed in. The mermaids living underwater take the rocks and carry them away. Hanuman sees a lovely mermaid supervising the others. He swims towards her, but she evades him. Hanuman finds himself falling in love with the creature. He decides to woo her with songs and loving words. He asks the mermaid why she is stealing the rocks. She tells him that she is a servant, Maka, a soldier of Ravan, who has abducted Sita. When Ravan saw Hanuman's army building a bridge, he instructed Sura and Maka to stop it. When Hanuman tells the mermaid why he is building the bridge, she relents. According to some stories, they became lovers and had a son named Makanu. Hindus believe that so great is Hanuman's power that the mere mention of his name is enough to drive evil away. Here's another verse from the Hanuman Chalisa. Meaning, all the ghosts, demons, and evil forces keep away with the sheer mention of your great name, O Hanuman. There are many stories of Hanuman's great accomplishments, but I will stop here. You can research the topic and learn more. Google Gigi. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black. I was listening to every word of this story, and again, what is rushing through my mind is that these stories and the intervention when the people sing the verses, it's sitting on something really dynamic and it needs to be explored. So thank you very much for that wonderful reading. We now move along quickly because I'm looking at the time and it's 10 minutes to 12 with Mr. Brandon Harry Persad, who is attached to the temple. I think it's in Rock Road. And he's going to bring a song, Jai Jagdish Hari. And we also congratulate the harmonium player. Wonderful job. And we could sing along, if we know it.
स्वामी शरण करो जिसकी तुम बिन और न दूजा तुम बिन और न दूजा आश करो जिसकी ओम जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे स्वामी जय जगदीश हरे भक्त जनों के संकट भक्त जनों के संकट जन में दूर करे ओम जय जगदीश हरे तुम हो एक अगोचर सबके प्राणपति स्वामी सबके प्राणपति विजय विकार मिटाओ विजय विकार मिटाओ पाप हरो देवा ओम जय जगदीश हरे विजय विकार मिटाओ पाप हरो देवा स्वामी पाप हरो देवा किसी विधि मिलो जया में किसी विधि मिलो जया में तुम हो एक ओम जय जगदीश हरे ओम जय जगदीश हरे स्वामी जय जगदीश हरे भक्त जनों के संकट भक्त जनों के संकट तन में दूर करे ओम जय जगदीश हरे
Wonderful. You know, it is said that Einstein, on a visit to India to talk about his theories of relativity, heard that song. And he said when he heard it, a portal in time and space opened for him. I have heard that song so many thousands of times, and every time I'm moved by it. Every single time I hear it, I'm moved by it. Thank you. Wonderful. Now I want to introduce the next reader, Analia Devnarayan. Is it a Zoom intervention? Or is she here? Oh, sorry about that. Yes, Analia is here. I remember her face. She's a teacher at St. Augustine Girls High School, and she provided great assistance in editing the stories that we heard today. So it means that you suffered. Yes. No, you didn't suffer. She said she didn't suffer. Just kidding you, just kidding. Right. So we want to invite Analia to do the next reading, Seeing God. Let's hear a round of applause for Analia.
Good day. So I'll be reading the story, Seeing God in Everyone. My paternal grandmother, my Aajee, who came from India, was a woman way ahead of her time. She was not only the village shaman, but also the village bush doctor, who prescribed herbs and bush medicines for various illnesses. She rubbed nara and butchet, pulled strains and sprains, and jarried from babies to adults, curing them of various ailments. Unlike the other women who walked behind their husbands, she walked alongside. And my Aajee, my grandfather, never did anything without first consulting her. She was the head of the village susu, lead singer at Majikur, Barahi, and Chatti celebrations, chief celebrants at the village Ramayan and Bhagavad Yagnas, the educator of quarrels and disputes in the village, especially between wives and husbands, and one of the only women who could sing verses from the Ramayan. She was also a great storyteller. After my Aajee died at age 68 in 1962, my grandmother used to visit and spend time with her 8 children, all of whom by then were married with children of their own and living in their own homes. As grandchildren, we looked forward to her visits
For, although she did not bring presents, she came with her many stories. She would gather around her sitting on a pall that would spread on the floor and listen with great joy to her tales and parables from the Hindu religious texts. When relating her epics, which always had a moral lesson, she usually began with a few lines from the Ramayana. Here is how I remember her telling a story over 60 years ago. She would sing, meaning, see God in every person and treat them with respect that you will treat him. Once upon a time, there was a woman who lived in a village in India and who prayed to God every day, morning and evening. She thought continuously about him and wished she could meet him in person. One evening, she prayed intensely before going to bed. During the night, she had a dream. God appeared in her dream and assured her he would visit her the next day. The next morning, she woke up very happy, singing her bhajans while making preparations to welcome him. She cleaned her house, did puja, made a rangoli at her entrance, and decorated her home with flowers. She then began to prepare food, making Persad, laddu, kurma, gulab jamun, and barfi. Soon, there was a knock at the door. It was a beggar, one who came regularly and to whom she always gave Anna small coin. She was annoyed and shouted, "Not today, I am busy. Come back tomorrow. I'm expecting an important guest, so please keep my doorway clear." By now, she had finished making her sweets, so she took a bath, changed her clothes, and sat waiting for God while chanting mantras and singing bhajans.
भजले गोविंद भजले गोविंद भजले गोविंदम ये दुनिया में प्रभु की माया भजले गोविंदम भजले गोविंद भजले गोविंद भजले गोविंदम ये दुनिया में प्रभु की माया भजले गोविंदम.
Meaning, come to me, O Lord, praise be to you. A little while later, there was another knock at the door. It was the neighbor's daughter who had come to play with the woman's daughter, Savitri. She was irritated. "I'm sorry, Savitri, cannot play today. Come back tomorrow. We have an important guest who will be coming any time now. Please go." The neighbor's daughter walked away slowly, very disappointed. Hours passed and soon it became night, but still God did not come. She was broken-hearted and wondered how God could not keep his promises. The night, she fell asleep, weeping and dejected and thinking about God. He came to her in her dreams and said, "I came to you 2 times today, but you sent me away. No, 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 I waited all day, but you never came. What time did you come?" God replied, "I came first as a beggar, and then as the neighbor's child, but each time you sent me away." Realizing her mistake, the woman said, "I did not recognize you." God replied, "I am present in everything and everyone." The moral: Like the woman in this story, we too may treat people without respect and love, yet want to see God. To see God, we must see Him in everything around us. At the end of the story, we told our Aajee that the story was too short and asked her to sing a song for us. She sang,
शाम मुरारी आ जाए बन करके भिखारी क्या जाने कब शाम मुरारी आ जाए बन करके भिखारी कहीं लौट जाए द्वार से कहीं लौट ना जाए द्वार से लिया बिना कोई ध्यान रे क्या जाने किस देश में बाबा मिल जाए भगवान रे बड़े प्यार से मिलना सबसे.
meaning meets everyone with unbounded love, who knows in what disguise he may come. He may come as a prince or as a beggar. You will never know. Do not let him leave without receiving alms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Analia. Wonderful. I hope your students, listen to your voice too. Wonderful voice. I just Willard, I should pay Moti today, or we should pay Moti today for hearing these wonderful voices. You understand? Moti, please stay home. We want to hear these wonderful voices, or not? All right. I had to put in that plug there, right? But after hearing all the readings, I buy no book. The readings are so wonderful. Yeah, but thank you, Mr. Nani. It was really great. And while listening to the singing, I'm reminded that I'm hearing songs that are thousands of years old. When we hear things, we must always go back in time. Derek Walcott, in his Nobel Acceptance Prize speech for literature, said when he landed in Trinidad on a very dark and rainy night, and he was coming through that village in St. Helena, he said he saw a bamboo tent, and they had these flambeaux, and these people were acting out the Ramlila. And then he said, it is not only the physical presence of the East Indians in Trinidad or the Caribbean. What they brought with them was their spirituality. They brought with them that devotion to their religion and their culture and their ancestors. He said, and he was deeply moved by that experience, that when he saw they acting out these plays of Ram. When I was a student in the University of the West Indies, V.S. Naipaul had come to Trinidad on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago government exchange program. And I remember Pat Bishop asking me to do a piece of relief sculpture in the university walls so that Naipaul could give his comments on it. And I went to the kitchen and I saw my wife with a red urni on her head making a sada roti. And the story of Drapaudi, those who are really devout Hindus will know that. Brandon, you know the story of Drapaudi? Where in a gambling match, right? When she said, listen, she has to disrobe. And they kept pulling at the robe. And she prayed to the gods. And the more they pulled at the robe, the more the robe kept flowing. And I did this sculptural piece of my wife, five pieces of my wife in this red sari, the red sari. And Kenneth Ramchan, who had a Caucasian wife at that point in time, she came and she said, wow, look, the story is coming alive. Look, because my wife was walking while the sculptural piece was going up. She said, look, this story is coming alive. Look, this story is coming alive. Look, the girl in the red sari. Look, Drapaudi. I said, no, that's Carmen, that's my wife. Right? 25 years passed. And when Naipaul himself came to look at the sculptural work, he said, this is so great. However, the university broke down the building and they never preserved the work. Right? 25 years afterwards, I went to a function in San Fernando, and Ramchan was there with his wife, and my wife was walking. She said, Ken, come, look, Drapaudi. Look, the girl with the red sari. I said, no, that is Carmen. It had stuck in her mind that the story had come all the way from India, but it is coming alive in the faces and the characters that we see in front of us. And then today, Ramisa, our good friend who lives in Suraj Trace, one day he told me something that was totally staggering. He said, you know, I take a few drinks, Rudolph. I said, well, you always do. Yeah, and you know him? Well, don't you know today? I said, you always do. He's Kamta good partner too. He said, what, I wake up with a kind of thing, boy. I said, what it is? He said, you know, I go on, a pee take me and I go on behind my house to pee. He said, and then I realize Ram living next door. Krishna living a little way down the road. Sita living across from me. And he went on and on. He said, India, the gods of India are living among us, Rudolph. He said, and the names that they have been given, they are either friends or enemies. He said, India is coming alive. I said, wow, Turesh, what a story. What a story. He said, the Pandavas are here now, Rudolph. I said, all right, let me go and meet the Pandavas. And then he started to call everyone my name. And that was their actual names. They were giving their children their names. So when we giving children names like Chukulungs, you understand? Butterfly, sunshine. You know, come on. We ain't doing nothing much there now. You understand? When I was teaching Erie Road Press, there was a little boy. I said, Ma'am, what is the name of this little boy? She said, his name Sheldon Emmanuel Carter Richardson, this, that. I said, well, for that little boy, you give all that name? She said, sir, you give him a name. I said, I find he look like a real pure African. Let's call him Mobongo. All right, time moved on. One time for him to write common entrance now. Nobody in the school knew he named Sheldon Carter. The whole school calling him Mobongo. The woman had to go and swear affidavit now. You understand? I said, don't do that. You know, it was just a little joke I was making, a nickname. You understand? She said, no, sir, you were right. He loved the name. It was the name of his ancestors. It's the same thing what Malcolm X said. He said, I do not know the names of my ancestors. I vexed my father, named me Rudolph. Where that come from? He said, oh, Rudolph Valentino was a lover on the screen. He was heckling women whole day. Was that a curse I was doomed to bear? You understand what I'm saying? So what's in a name? Everything's in a name. Everything. Dawadi, one day you'll tell us the story of your name. Eh? It's interesting. Yeah. So, Judy? No, I do not know no Judy. I think I was renaming. And we always doing that. Ralph used to do that too, no? He used to always be renaming people. So that story about we seeing God in everybody and seeing God everywhere. Right? I like that story. Let's see God in everything. We move along. The next person we have on the program is a person who I know very well, who has visited my home several times. She lives in Canada. She belongs to one of the richest families ever in Trinidad and Tobago. She was just born into wealth. She was born into wealth and she was born into education. Her brother was the principal. I think it was a brother or uncle. Was the father. Yeah. Was the principal of Queen's Royal College. And I met him when she came by my home. And he was such a learned person. Quiet, humble. And she was also smiling. I worked under her aunt, Margaret Jagesa, right? And she in her own right was a great, great scholar of literature, English. You know, a lot of people want to say they want to get into poetry and literature. My advice to anybody who wants to get into anything, whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's literature, whether it's agriculture, go and spend your money and learn. Don't go and just say, I am self-taught. Anybody who tells me I'm self-taught, I'll say, excuse me, Krishna, and I go on. They had brought Leroy Clark in the University of the West Indies. And he said, well, you know, I am self-taught. I said, thanks for telling me, and I go on. Because the world sits on knowledge. The world sits on knowledge. Somebody say, I don't believe in no doctor, I believe in bush medicine. I say, well, when you get sick, don't go to the doctor. When you get really sick, don't go in the hospital and don't go in the clinic. Keep on disrespecting education. Keep on disrespecting. One of the things I always admired about Ralph Omrao, right? He always encouraged all his students, every single one of his students, whether it was at primary school, secondary school, university level, teachers college level. I taught with Ralph in primary school. He went on to secondary school, and then he went on to university. You understand? Sometimes I feel very guilty about calling him Ralph, because he's such an esteemed scholar in his own right. He's such an esteemed scholar, and he was a source of inspiration for thousands and thousands, more than 100,000 young men and women to go forward with your education. So don't come and say, I like this and I like that. No. Spend a little time, join a group. I like this South group that Moti has started, but I urge everybody, go forward, go forward, go forward. So we want to invite Miss Heather, right, who was a resident of Penal, and she has tremendous stories. I think she has a new book out in publication. What's the name of the book? Would you remind me? I can't remember it offhand. We brought it so many times. Cersei? Cersei? Yeah.
It's named after, yeah, there it is. It's named after the
I wanted to back talking. I wanted to back talking. You're right behind my back. Yes, what's the name of the book? Hold up for me again, Heather. Heather, hold up the book for me again. Hold up the book. Cersei's Dream.
Cersei's Dance.
Cersei's Dance. Another stories. Yes.
Yes.
I must say, Heather has been a wonderful friend to me and my family, my son, my wife, and I have the great pleasure to say I have met someone really, really great in this community. So without much ado, I hand you over to Ms. Heather Boodoosingh. Thank you very much.
Rudolph, boy, you humble me there. I don't know how to answer all that. One thing I must tell you, we didn't end up rich, you know, because the Canadian missionaries kind of got our oil-bearing lands. You know, they thief it from under us. But that's a different story. Huh?
You have to talk to Ralph about it.
Yeah. Anyway, let me say I wish to extend a heartfelt congratulations to my friend Motilal on the launch of his fourth book. What a privilege it is to read today to help him celebrate. And I am pleased to say that I am very proud to belong to a family of penal writers, you know, which include Motilal, Kamta, among others. I don't know, you know, going back to what Rudolph said earlier, I don't know what it is about penal, you know, that made us different. Maybe it's nostalgia. Maybe we all had our navel strings buried there in the backyard like I did. So anyway, as Moti will tell you, I'm tied to penal in more ways than one. Anyway, today I will be reading The Adventures of Rama by Motilal Boodoosingh. Here we go. My grandmother on my father's side was the wisest woman in the village. She knew all about the herbs and bush medicine of various illnesses. Made ghee and daki, rubbed and cured sprains and strains, helped resolve disputes among the villagers, and also between man and wife, and delivered babies. She served as a grandmother to all the children in Bhagrati trace, whether they were related or not. All the children called her Mai, meaning mother. The older men and women called her Baka Mai, signifying her status as the older, wiser mother. Before I started school, she took me everywhere. To Bagwat, Katas and Ramyan Yagas, to the Kutia, to the sea for Kartik Nanan, to Ram Leela and Krishan Leela and Diwali celebrations. And she could sing bhajans and verses from the Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita. And she could tell stories, usually accompanying them with verses from the holy books. Among her favorite stories were those of Lord Rama and Lord Krishna. Once the world was in chaos, as the demons led by Ravan became very powerful and were attacking the righteous people who were worshipping God. In order to save his devotees and the world, he caused himself to be born as Lord Rama on earth, the eldest son of King Dasarath. Here, the chorus sings. Meaning, to protect the righteous, to destroy the wicked, I come to earth age after age. The story goes on. With Rama's father growing old, his wish is to make his son Rama king. However, he's reminded by one of his junior wives, Kakahi, that he once promised her a gift that she never asked for. She wants it now. Her son Bharat should be crowned king and Rama be exiled to the forest for 14 years. King Dasarath is devastated. He pleads with her, but to no avail. He says, and here Mai bursts into song again. Meaning, I am descended from a lineage who keep their word. I would rather my life goes than not to do so. He keeps his word. Later, he dies of grief, and Rama and his younger brother Lakshman obeys their father's vow and go to the exile in the forest. While living in banishment, Lakshman meets a demoness, Ravan's sister, who attempts to seduce him. He refuses her advances, and she attacks him. He cuts off her nose. As a revenge, she persuades her brother to kidnap Rama's wife Sita and hand her to his harem. One of the demons changed himself into a golden deer and entices Sita to leave the protected area she's in. Ravan abducts Sita. Rama and his brother Lakshman searches for Sita. Ravan would not give her up. With the help of Hanuman, the god of the monkeys, they wage war against Ravan and the demons. After many adventures and battles, Ravan and his demon army is defeated. Raman is killed and Sita is rescued. Peace and righteousness is restored in the world, and the 14-year banishment has elapsed. Rama returns and is given his kingdom by Bharat, who never wanted it in the first place. To welcome Rama, Sita and Lakshman, the people of the kingdom light rows of diyas in their homes on streets. This is said to be the first Diwali celebration. But peace and harmony are not present in Rama's household. The gossips in the kingdom keep shoo-shooing about Sita's stay at Ravan's kingdom. How could Sita remain faithful to Rama while living in Ravan's palace, they whispered. Even Rama began to have doubts. He orders Sita to go through trial by fire, that is, walking through flames to prove one's fidelity. Sita emerges unscathed. Rama apologizes, but Sita is angry that her husband doubted her love and faithfulness. She leaves the palace and returns to the forest, seeking refuge in an ashram. There she gives birth to twin sons. Rama never stopped looking for his Sita. When he finally meets her, his two sons are young men. Together they convince her to return home. Rama rules for a long time, teaching valuable lessons to mankind before he and Sita ascend to heaven, assuming their divine form. And here the chorus sings again.
Jai Ram, Jai Ram.
My sister Chandra, who was 4 years older than my 9, had started high school at Victoria College in Penal and felt she knew everything. She had become skeptical about my stories. She questioned, how come Rama, if he was God, did not cause Katahi to forget King Dasaratha's promise? God would not need a battle to destroy Ravan. He could do it all by himself. He did not need the help of Hanuman and his army. He would have known that Sita was faithful. I was horrified. How dare she disrespect my beloved Mai? Mai looked at her calmly and said, the stories of the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible, and indeed all of the holy books of all religions, are there to teach us life lessons. When God comes on earth to restore righteousness, he comes as an ordinary human being, lives and acts as one, so we can learn by the example he set how to live and how to behave. The end. Thank you, Motilal.
Move along quickly because you know your belly is a time clock. Yeah. And but it is my pleasure to introduce Krishna. You can't help but like Krishna. You cannot help but like Krishna. The fella always smiling, the fella always pleasant, the fella always jovial. You can't help it. You know that's something you don't like at all, Willard? You understand? But Krishna is not one of those fellas. No. He could make friends anywhere he go. Anywhere he goes, he could make friends. And Krishna is a retired teacher himself, right? A prize-winning poet, a novelist. He has written several really great things. And this Moti and he have become friends for a long while now. And he always there to give Moti advice and to edit his books and all that. So I'm inviting Krishna, let's put a round of applause to do his reading. Let's hear it for him.
Smiling. Thank you, Rudolph. Congratulations, Moti. Good afternoon, everyone. Glimpses of my father. When I was about 11, I asked my mother why we were living far from my grandmother while our cousins were living near. She said that my grandfather, Bap, was vexed with my father, Bim Singh, because he had disobeyed him in getting married to her, meaning my mother. He knew his father had other plans, as he had hinted that Bim should marry Carmen, the daughter of his friend Rup Singh, who was a rich man and who would help the couple build a house. Carmen was a nice girl, very nice girl, but Bim was too smitten with my mother, Raju, whom he had met while working at the bus company. He was not given any land by his father, and so he moved out of the village. When Raju's brother Mak and some elders from Raju's village came to speak with Bap, he was unshakable. No permission could be got from him. When Bim Singh attained the age of 21, he could do what he wanted. Mak decided to seek the help of Mr. Rat. Many a time, when the father of a prospective groom did not agree to a wedding, Mr. Rat would turn up at the warden's office and claim to be the groom's father. If the groom was under 21, the warden once asked him, "How many sons you have, boy?" My parents got married at the Siparia warden's office. They did not have a traditional Hindu wedding. I remember my father taking my mother, sisters, and me for drives. He had bought his own car, a blue Ford Zephyr. He took us to the beach, the zoo, to see the Diwali lights at Aranguez, the lookout on the Lady Young Road, and of course, you must see the Upside Down Hotel. I loved for him to drive fast and would ask him to pass the cars in front of us,
Sure, he would say. This is a Zephyr, you know. That is a console, as he overtook with his higher-powered car. Once he was teaching, hear this, once he was teaching my mother to drive. Keep the bird in the center of the road, he instructed her. The bird being an ornament on the bonnet of the car, you know, the middle. My mother kept the bird in the center of the road even when another car was approaching from the opposite direction. We screamed as my father quickly pulled the steering and the car ended up in the drain. Driving lessons done for that day. My father dressed well when he went to work as a taxi driver. Well-pressed khaki pants, white shirt, Dunlop white crepe sole shoes, the ones with the sponge lining to keep your foot comfortable. On the shelving under the dashboard, he kept a half-pound ghee pan for the coins he received. When he received $1, he put his in his pants pocket as he gave the change. Every morning he started working with the pan a quarter full, after giving my mother most of the previous day's taking to run the house. My father rarely disciplined us. This was left mostly to our mother, who would say, as we all know, wait till your father reach home, his cutlass in your tail. He wore a broad leather belt. I remember getting 2 when I was in standard 3. He was checking my homework and there were several red X's. The girls never got licks, and I remember this one time only. You know, I inherited that belt, which I wear to this day. Moti, you have it on? I cannot remember my father saying, I love you. I cannot remember my father saying, son, I love you. But he attended our school concerts, permitted us to go on outings, took us to sport meetings, and bought presents for us for birthdays and for Christmas. When my parents started to build our new house, the money soon ran out. We had 3 rooms upstairs and a makeshift kitchen downstairs with no doors and windows for the living room. My mother was determined that we move in before Christmas 1964. We could use the boards from the old house to build an upstairs kitchen and complete the house. For the next 2 years, my father would work to complete our home bit by bit. My father gave us room to grow. He left the taxi driving to work with a contractor at the refinery. He worked long hours, leaving home at 5:30 a.m. and returning at 5:30 p.m. Sometimes in the morning, if my mother was not finished cooking, here what used to happen, I had to go next door and ask Polly's mother to borrow 2 rotis, which my mother would give back later. On his return, after a bath and dinner, he would sit in the hammock downstairs with his dog Scotty until bedtime. Now, I got a job as a learner refinery operator. We had a Austin, Cambridge, which I was allowed to drive to work, taking my father and 2 neighbors. I had a girlfriend who worked at Chanka's Hardware in Duncan Village. I picked her up after work. My father would go in the back seat, allowing her to sit in front. Sometimes, the girlfriend would leave for home early on a Friday. So once we stopped at CDL's bar for a drink. Bob, one of the neighbors, ordered half of Eclipse, a Pepsi, and a stout for the boy, meaning me. My father said, stout for the boy? Look, bring a glass. He feel like those smelly mouth with rum when he come home after liming up the rope. Bring a glass. When I had an African girlfriend, my mother wasn't too pleased. My father reminded her, it takes sun and rain to make rainbow. He also made a rival remark about the feline species in the night, which didn't quite amuse my mother. I recall when my father one day borrowed my car and returned without it. He had one too many. I found he had left the keys in ignition at Charlie's shop and gone with some other friends on a drinking line. Sometimes, as we get older, we think we are smarter than our fathers. I learned a valuable lesson one day. I took my car for repairs, and the mechanic brought it home afterwards. Next morning, I had to take my mother to the market. There was a knock from the engine, and my father advised me not to drive the car as it seemed that the mechanic had left something loose. I ignored him and paid the expensive price of extensive repairs. Now, one incident that really made me proud was when I saw my father reading with the Ramayana group at a neighbor's house. I never imagined he could read Hindi, much less translate the teachings. I wish that I had taken the time to learn more about my father. If I had done so, I would hear more in this story. God bless you, Papa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krishna. And if there's one thing I would like to say, is that he has a tendency to give what you call constructive critique to members of poetry and prose. So if anyone looking for knowledge, go straight to him. Now, up next, we have a very special lady. Before I read what's in front of me, I would like to say that this lady, and wherever she is, she may want to know how I know all this information. But hey, let me tell you, she is the vice principal of the Barrackpore West Secondary School. And I have a relative working here who I understand is a very good friend. I really hope I don't get licks for saying this in front of a whole crowd of people. All right. So, she is the great-granddaughter of the Aajee of this book. She is an actress, dramatist, director, and teacher of drama arts. And I would like her to let me know if I am a good dramatist or not. Let's see. And I invite none other than Miss Geneva Boodoosingh. Let us hear a lusty round of applause for her.
Ta-da! I decided to make a dramatic entrance. Sorry about that. Good. Thank you for the introduction. Before I begin, I just want to say that the story that I'm reading today from the book is the story of Savitri. And Uncle Moti reminded me to say that his wife is also Savitri. So I'm reading the story of Savitri. The theme for the virtual story time in March in Asia and for original writers is focusing on a female lead. And the story that I'm reading today is adapted from Hinduism, and it is one of the greatest Asian religions that tells of this character known as Savitri, a leading female character. Many of the stories I listened to while growing up that were told by my grandmother had revolved around strong and heroic male characters. Ram, Krishna, Arjun, Lakshman, and even Ravan. But what about the women in Holy Scriptures? They are heroines in their own right, fought their own battles, and had a thinking brain and sharp wit in addition to their caring feelings. They were fearless, loyal, intelligent, and never resisted speaking up when the occasion demanded. Today, I want to tell the story of Savitri, one such character from the Hindu holy scriptures, as was told to me as a child over 60 years ago. Long, long ago, there was a king named Ashwapati in a city called Madura. He and his queen were childless and prayed to the gods for a child. At last, the goddess Saraswati blessed them with a girl whom they named Savitri, another name for Saraswati. Savitri grew up to be a beautiful, intelligent, and wise woman. She was skilled in athletics as well as in learning, in debates about religion, philosophy, art, history, and ethics. She bettered all, including the young men of the kingdom who dared challenge her. When she became of marriageable age, the young men of the kingdom were afraid to court her because they could not measure up to her standards. She felt that they were shallow and boring. Her father, seeing that he could not find a suitable boy for her, therefore asked Savitri to find her own husband. Savitri, not too enthusiastic in becoming a bride, set out to visit the forested hermitages where the saints and sages lived, so she could learn from their wisdom and perhaps meet a suitor who was her equal. In the hermitages, she met Satyavan. He was the son of an exiled king who had become blind, and his kingdom was taken from him. He and his queen moved into the woods to live among the saints and hermits when Satyavan was a baby. His son grew up in the company of the sages and benefited immensely from their teachings and wisdom. He made his living as a woodcutter. He was the equal of Savitri in intellect and she fell in love with him. She had found someone who was worthy of being her husband and was not intimidated by her. She would not mind sharing his poverty. Being the liberated woman she was, she proposed to Satyavan, and he readily accepted. Savitri returned to her father's palace to give him the news. He and his queen were not pleased at first, but seeing their daughter's determination, they agreed. As was the custom then and even now among Hindu families, checks had to be made to ascertain the suitability of the couple. The priest would consult the holy books and, using astrological charts, tell about the chances of a successful union. In Trinidad, we call this checking the guna. As Savitri's father's court at that time was the Saint Narad Muni. Narad Muni is known as the messenger of God. He is a traveling musician and storyteller versed in the sciences of astrology and religious traditions. He carries a kartal, which is a knuckle-held instrument with small cymbals, as well as a veena, a type of harp, as he travels all over the world, praising the Lord, singing, Narayan Hari Narayan, Narayan Hari Narayan, Bhaji Govindam, Bhaji Govindam, Bhaji Govindam Narayan, Narayan Hari Narayan, Narayan Hari Narayan. Narad Muni was consulted. He told the king that Savitri had made a great mistake in choosing Satyavan. Although he had so many good qualities and was so much like Savitri, he was destined to die in 1 year's time. The king begged Savitri to choose someone else, but she was adamant. She felt that a year with her Satyavan would bring her greater happiness than a lifetime spent with those boring suitors. It was she who had proposed, as she had given her heart to Satyavan. Narad Muni gave his approval for the marriage. After the wedding, Satyavan and his bride left her father's kingdom for the humble home of Satyavan, where he continued doing his duty, taking care of his blind father and aging mother. In the hut in the forest, Savitri, who had left all her luxurious clothes and fine jewelry at her father's home, now dressed in ordinary wear and performed the tasks that were done by servants in another time. The residents in the forested village praised her kindness, generosity, and gentle speech. She had a wonderful life with her beloved Satyavan, but Narad's prediction weighed heavily on her mind. And as the end of that first year grew closer, she was full of grief. She had never told Satyavan of Narad's words, and pretended all was well as she fasted and prayed to Lord Narayan to spare her husband, even as she continued to serve him and his parents. On the appointed day, Satyavan went out as usual to the forest, axe in hand. Satyavan was surprised when Savitri asked to go with him, determined to spend every last minute with him. At first, he was reluctant, but when she pointed out that she had already done her chores and taken care of her in-laws, and that this was their first wedding anniversary, he relented. The streams, flowers, and trees never seemed more beautiful than that fateful day. As she walked with her husband, Savitri was praying in her mind. Satyavan chose a tree and began to cut. After a while, he told Savitri that he was feeling a pain and he would rest a while before starting again. Savitri sat on the ground, putting his head on her lap and stroking his hair. This was the appointed time, and Satyavan left the world. Yama, the lord of death, came and took Satyavan's soul and headed towards the land of the dead. When Yama left for his realm, Savitri began following him. Yama pointed out that her duty was to go back to her husband's body and perform the funeral rites, but Savitri countered that her duty was to be with her husband. They argued and debated, but Savitri's knowledge of the scriptures and philosophy proved too much for Yama. Yama admired her skill and grasp of the sacred text and told her he would grant her one wish except for the life of her husband if she stopped following him. Savitri asked that her father-in-law be able to see his grandchildren. Eager to be rid of her, Yama hastily agreed. Savitri then pointed out that Satyavan was an only child and there could be no grandchildren if he was dead. Realizing he had been tricked, Yama laughed heartily. Never before had he been bettered by a woman. He said, "You are a great woman who deserves a loving husband. You will have Satyavan's life back." Thus, Satyavan was restored to life and his father regained his kingdom. And later, Satyavan became king, lived happily with his wife, his queen and chief advisor, Savitri. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Geneva. Well, I guess that destiny had it. That because of the dramatist that she is, she had to introduce her own story. Because I just totally forgot to say that she was going to read the story of Savitri. So that's what she read. The story of Savitri. I promise I will never make that mistake again. And if I do make that mistake again, feel free to give me a good cocktail. Right. So our final reader on the program for today. Now, this person is an accomplished poet and writer, a frequent judge at various writing competitions. He has always exhibited his mastery of the written word, a treasured member of poetry and prose. He has been a mentor to many of the younger members. And at this time, I would like to call and hand over to Kasi Sengho, and he will be reading a story entitled The Business Plan. Let us hear it for him.
Thank you very much. Good, is it still morning? I'm not sure. Morning or afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Motilal, for inviting me to read from your fourth book, your most recent publication. And it's a pleasure always to be here in the DB Library. This is my third visit to the DB Library. My first visit was quite by accident, I must say, because I did not leave home to come here on that day, and I ended up here because on the way I passed by the Cuba Library, and it struck me that the day before there was a program that had to do with what is it called when you have those lovers in February there? Valentine's. Right, the day before was Valentine's. And I remember that there was a program at this library about Valentine's, and I say, maybe I should just visit there and see what it's like. So that's how I ended up here the first time. I got invited the second occasion to teach children. I'm sure some of them are yours or your grandchildren. Not teach really, but to share with them poetry. And I met quite a number of 5-year-olds, 6 years, up to about 7 or 8-year-olds. And we had a good time talking and reading and writing poetry. And that was my second visit, and today is my third visit here. And I must say that I'm happy to be among the readers, some of whom are members of Poetry and Prose, as Shahira would have mentioned in her introduction to me. It was a pleasure seeing Arlene, for instance, who emailed me earlier this week to say that she will see me. And I didn't know how that would happen, but technology made it possible for me to see her. And I'm sure right now, I don't know if it's happening, but she may also be seeing me too. Seeing Arlene, seeing Heather, of course, a black, being in company with a black for the first time, being in Krishna's company, who I've known for many a year, when we were in Writers Union together and so on. I sat down next to a reader, Willard, and our MC, Rudolph. And Rudolph reminded me, about, I think he ended up saying at one point this morning here, that everything is in a name and he does not know where he got his name from and all of that. And this has been, of course, a very touching subject, the question of a name for us Africans, in the diaspora. Because we too have been, we were robbed of our names. as you all know, our spirituality, our culture, etc., etc. And here we are in Trinidad, and we have been trying, like Africans and Indians, I suppose, in all the diaspora, to either regain and or maintain what we know, the goodness we know of ourselves. It's a bit more difficult for the African for obvious reasons, and so that our scattering also has with it seeds then that we take with us into everything that we do, you know, so that we in terms of reclaiming and getting back names and so on, it's a very good idea that we should do this. I live in an Indian community. I don't know how this is happening. I live in Karipichaima, and quite a number of my neighbors bear European names, you know, and especially the women. And I always insist that I would rather call them by their Indian names, you know, and when they reveal that to me, that is what I call them by. So that all the Anis and the Dorines and the others and so on, I, you know, put that aside and I get their correct names and I call them by their Indian names. That is what I like to do. And as for myself, of course, I changed my name, having been a part of the Black Power in the 1970s. I changed my name, and my entire family, everyone has African names. My surname is Singh, which means descendant of the gods. And all my family, all my Singhs, have African names, you know, right down to my grandchildren. And we are expecting a new grandchild sometime late, well, maybe October. We are in October, maybe next month or so. Yeah, so total African names, which helps us. Rudolph said everything is in a name. It helps us to keep that kind of togetherness, that family life, that love, and that dignity and integrity. True. Because in the stories that I've heard, there's a lot of dignity and integrity among the characters in the stories. I think in the last one that we read about Savitri, I think I heard mention the question of checking out the guna. That is, I think the gunas are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And checking out the guna means that you want to know that the person you're going to get married to has a certain amount of integrity. You know, you want to marry someone who is going to do well. And this corresponds also to the story about seeing God in everyone. And I want to take the opportunity to say that by extension, if we should see God in ourselves, it will be very helpful. And in that way, let's say in the story, if the lady who was waiting on God to come through the door was capable or had knowledge of how to find God in herself, she would not have had the problem of chasing away anyone, because she would have known where God resides in herself and therefore in all of us. So having said that, I'm now going to read the story given to me by Motilal, which is entitled The Business Plan. My Aajee, my father's mother, was the greatest storyteller there ever was. While she loved telling the stories of her native land, India, from where she came, and which consisted of tales from the Hindu holy books, like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, she also told the folk tales and legends about Raja and Rani, princes and paupers, and animals from her homeland. Having come to Trinidad when she was just 9 years old, by the time us grandchildren came along, she was also well versed in the local stories about our village and also our own Trinidad folklore. Sometimes on evenings when it became dark and the only light was the moon and a small flambeau, as there was no electricity in our village, and the eerie songs of the cicadas and screeching owls and occasional wild animals pierced the silence of our little carrot house, situated next to Sir Juice Cocoa Estate, we would sit at her feet as she frightened our tales with tales of jumbies, duendes, lagahos, and sukuya. We would become afraid, and then she would calm us with funny stories about the people in our village or stories of her homeland, so that we will not have nightmares when we went to sleep. Her stories always carried life lessons. Here is one. Once, there was a fisherman named Baljet who lived with his wife and son in the village of Mondiablo. He was a happy-go-lucky man who earned enough to live comfortably. He loved the country life, where he could plant a little garden, hunt, bathe in the sea, and relax in his hammock after a little smoke and a drink of spring water to chase down a swig of bush rum. His wife was ambitious and wanted to move to the town of Pinal, where there were pipe water, electricity, groceries, and bigger houses. But when Baljet pointed out that he could not continue his work as a fisherman, living so far away from the sea, she grudgingly accepted this. However, she insisted that her only son, who was doing well at school, be not confined to being a fisherman, and demanded that he be sent away to America to study. Baljet, who had been saving his money, decided that he would get some peace from his nagging wife and readily acceded. Son went away, wife stopped mourning, and peace, content, and quiet returned to the Baljet's home. Years later, the son returned, qualified in economics and business strategy. When the novelty of rural living and showing off to the neighbors wore off in about a week, he began to complain about the lack of amenities in the home and proposed to his father that with his knowledge of economics and business, he could teach him to expand the small fishing business, to a very profitable one. Years later, the son returned qualified in economics and business strategy. When the he began to complain about the lack of amenities in the home and proposed to his father that with his knowledge of economics and business, he could teach him to expand the small fishing business to a very profitable one. One morning, when his father returned home at about 10 o'clock in the morning, after a reasonable catch, he asked to speak to him. Looking at the catch, the son asked, "How long did you take to catch those fish?" "Not very long," replied the father. "Then why didn't you stay longer and catch more?" son asked. The fisherman explained that he had enough fish to meet his needs at home, to sell to the fish vans that came from Pinal, and to get sufficient money to buy groceries, give to his wife, save a bit, and buy a nip of puncheon for himself. The fisherman explained that he had enough fish to meet his needs at home. And what will you do with the rest of the time? Son inquired. I will spend time with my wife, line with my friends, take a nap in the afternoon, relax in the evening by planting a little kitchen garden. And the son interrupted rudely. Look, man, you're wasting time. I have a degree in business and economics. I could show you how to improve yourself. Listen, first you start by fishing longer every day. Extra fish mean extra money. With the extra money, you could buy a bigger boat. And after that, budget task. Well, more money coming in. Now you could buy more boats and have men working for you. You could have a fleet of trawlers, and instead of selling to the fish vans from Penal, you could sell straight to the factory in Cedrus. Maybe you could even open your own factory. You could sell this house and land and go and live in Penal or even San Fernando, where there is piped water and electricity. From there, you can manage your business and remain home while you have men working for you. How long will that take? Asked the fisherman. 20 to 25 years, replied the son. And then what? Father asked. By then, your business will get real big. You could start selling shares to investors and make millions. Millions? Really? And what will I do after that? After that, you could retire in a small village like Mont Diablo, near the sea, spend time with your wife, line with your friends, take a nap in the afternoon, relax by planting a little kitchen garden, and take a little drink now and then. Look, son, I see all you know where this going already. Look, son, I'm doing that already. Why would I waste 25 years? Asked the fisherman. But, stammered the son. How much years you have, son? Father, you know I'm 30. Well, you don't waste about 25 years of your time. Don't waste my time. Stop depending on your father. Get a work. Leave and go if you want. Take your own advice and try and make your own money. I tired minding a damn fool. Thank you very much.
What's in our name? I like what you're saying now. I was listening carefully to every single word you said. It resonates. You understand? Like somebody asked me if I like to look like a country and western. I say, well, just to educate you. I actually bought this in Australia, made by an Aborigine, a First Nations man. Right? This is done from a crocodile that he caught for food. Right? It's not a country and western hat. You understand? And because he was so meticulous about how he was doing his craft, right? I was very, very impressed. And when he told me about how they worship the crocodile and all of that, I was so impressed. And I like what you said about what's in our name. Everything's in our name. Everything's in our name. I had a vice principal, and one day she said, Rudolph, I'm fed up with you and all. I said, why are you fed up with me? She said, because you have all these warped philosophies. She said, what is important, the message or the messenger? I said, miss, they both exist simultaneously. The messenger, if he's a false person, cannot bring a message. That's why I appreciate your message. When you had the strength of conviction to change the names of you and all your family. I salute you for that. I salute you. Mm-hmm. So we have come to the end of our proceedings. First of all, I want to thank, before I introduce Moti to give his thanks, I want to thank my co-host, Ms. Shahira Ali, who has been such a wonderful young lady. Yes, she has been such a wonderful person. I want to thank all those who backed up with the technology, Randy and Kamta and all the rest of folks that I don't know their names. I want to thank Devrat Kosain, Vilma Susanka, Madhu Tilak. The chorus was wonderful. I think it was drama at its best. I want to thank all the readers, Krishna, Randy, Brandon, Analia, Heather. I want to thank Gersha, who has been sitting there so humbly. I always like to trouble Gersha, no, she always looks so beautiful. Yeah, Gersha, thank you. Thank you for your input. I want to thank most of all the audience for bearing with me. If you carry back something home today, remember, the greatest disease of the 21st century and the 20th century is Alzheimer's. Your brain goes out if you do not challenge your brain. Keep on challenging your brain. Keep on reaching for new heights. Keep on seeking on intellectual conversation, intellectual heights. Think, think, think. Ralph Umrao had a saying. He used to say, give until it hurts. I say, think, think, think until it hurts. So with all of this, I want to say on behalf of myself as the chairman, Rudolph P. Singh, and Ms. Shahira Ali, thank you all for being a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
Well, you know, after Rudolph thanked everybody, my whole list here comes small, so. But again, I would like to thank everybody that Rudolph thanked. So, you know, Kamta, Raj, the people in the library. DB Library is my second home. And when COVID come, I really miss it, but I'm back here again. All right, I want to thank my wife, Savitri, who always support me. Savitri. Yeah, that's my granddaughter. You know, somebody was talking about the wife. I said, boy, you see me? I have a 5-star wife. All right, so I want to thank the DB Library, Rudy and Shahira for doing a wonderful job. The readers, you know, Cassie, Willard, thanks for Reverend Ralph for the prayer. And I want to, and my neighbor Dan Raj. You know, Dan Raj teach me in school, you know. But I have a story about that I have to write one of these days. You see Ralph and Dan Raj? Well, Mr. Ralph Umrao teaching in Pinal Rock CM. And then they started opening Mahasabha school. And then Mr. Dan Raj going to teach in the Mahasabha school. But he and my father used to play volleyball and things. So he come home by me and say, boy, you know, the new school, the Hindu school, and we go teach religion and all that, and all our is Hindu. So my father take me out and put me in the Mahasabha school. So a week passed, and Mr. Umrao see me and my sister coming to school. So he and a fellow called Beresford, Teacher Beresford, come home by me to find out why we not coming to school. So my mother say, well, you know, just going to this Hindu school and she gave them 2 cups of milk, 2 enamel cups of milk. We had cow. And the final thing, we going back to the Presbyterian school. It's a good thing we didn't change our uniform as yet. And then finally, when we move out of the village, I end up in the Hindu school. So I had to write that story. Anyway, I hope I didn't forget anybody. This here is my 5-star wife I talk about. This here is my granddaughter. All right? I have 2 other grandchildren in England. And I dedicate this book to my grandchildren, you know. I write here, in loving memory of my Aajee and Nani, and especially for my grandchildren, Jaden, Jaina, and Jaylee, Jaden and Jaina in England, who I hope would remember my stories the way I remember my Aajee stories and my Nani stories. When you come to the DB Library and you come to things that I involve in, it's hard thing to eat and drink. So I want to invite everybody to eat and drink. Anne-Marie, Aajee, thank you for coming. I always look forward. This lady always leave. We don't live in Reform and come to things in the library. When COVID hit us, we kind of ease up in the library. And then we started to go online, and online now we have a lot more people. But I always want to come and do things in the library. So thank you everybody, all who help, all my nephew, my nieces. I mean, Geneva is my Aajee great granddaughter. So thank you, and thanks God for giving me the ability and strength to write. And with that, I want to invite everybody. Well, we have things to eat and drink.